Welcome back to GH Updates, your go-to spot for all the drama, revelations, and explosive secrets from General Hospital. Buckle up, because the episode airing on Monday, June 2nd, 2025, is nothing short of a seismic shakeup in Port Charles. Let's break it all down. General Hospital will reveal Willow was once a gentle nurse, a devoted mother, and a woman forged by trauma, but held together by compassion. She had stood at the bedsides of Thediang, offered warmth to the grieving, and fought desperately to preserve the flickering light of her own fragile world. But life has a way of transforming the innocent into something darker. Betrayal, abandonment, illness, and humiliation had not merely hurt Willow. They had consumed her day after day of being isolated, maligned, and dismissed, of hearing her name drag through the courtroom like filth on a shoe, of watching Michael, the man she once loved, with trembling hope, twist her past mistakes into weapons against her, had burned through every last remnant of gentleness in her soul. Her own body had turned against her during her illness, forcing her torely on others she no longer trusted, reminding her daily that she had not control, not even over her own life. And when all was said and done, when the embers of her old self finally went cold, something else rose from Thediang. No longer meek, no longer soft, but born into a calculating, cold, and unforgiving force. To some, Willow's transformation may have looked like self-preservation, a woman finalizing up for herself after years off being taken for granted. But to Sasha, it was nothing short of a nightmare come to life. The moment Willow's eyes met hers in that courtroom, just as Sasha confessed that Michael was the father of the child she carried, something shifted. There were no screams, no collapse, just silence. Silence so deep and hollow that it echoed like a scream Sasha could never unhear. Willow's gaze was a void, a pit filled with suppressed rage, betrayal, and venomous disdain. It wastes kind of silence that doesn't marrow a throtten. It promises retribution. The fallout didn't come with warning. It arrived like a whisper in the dark, seeping into Sasha's life in ways she couldn't trace back Tanyan. But she knew. She always knew. First came the anonymous letters, acidic hand, accusatory, mailed to the hospital's board with such precision and venom that Sasha's position was suspended within a week. Then came the complaints filed to family services, accusing Sasha of mental instability, pill abuse, and endangering the welfare of an unborn child. The accusations were lies, twisted fabrication, supported by falsified evidence that looked too real to be ignored. There were photos she had never taken, videos from angles that only someone watching her obsessively have captured. Suddenly, she was being shadowed, scrutinized, and discredited from every direction. Her world began to crumble under the weight of invisible hands pulling strings from the shadows. And then came the toys. A tiny stuffed bear Amelia adored found one morning lying on Sasha's kitchen counter. A music box from Weiss' room playing by itself in her living room. A onesie Sasha had never seen before folded neatly in her laundry basket. These were in tacitance. These were in coincidence. They were threats, quiet and insidious messages that Willow could reach her, could touch her life, couldn't tour her world and reshape it as she pleased without ever being seen. She was no longer acting out of grief. She was wielding grief like a weapon, honing it like a blade. And through its hall, Willow said nothing. No accusations, no denials. She still went to church on Sundays, still wore her nurse's badge with quiet humility, still smiled at the bakery clerk, offered kind words to strangers, and handed out baked goods to the less fortunate. But when Sasha looked at her, it was as if she were looking through a pane of frosted glass. Something was off. Something just beneath the surface faced Tavo. There was no longer anything warm in Willow's eyes. Only control, purpose, and an icy resolve to exact a justice that only she could define. To Sasha, it was like living under siege by a ghost, one who wore a mask of virtue and goodness, all while dismantling her leafy own piece at a time. Willow had become the very essence of Nelle, her long-lost twin, the chaos of Port Charles incarnate, but with a dangerous evolution. If Nelle had been erratic, impulsive, and loud, Willow was the opposite. Methodical, deliberate, and terrifyingly quiet. She didn't need toss-scream to be heard. She whispered, and the world listened. She didn't stell a trite. She made it look like other shads surrendered willingly. And shouldn't have to destroy Sasha in front of a crowd. She did it slowly, privately, so that no one would believe Sasha wench cried out for help. There was no safety left, no sanctuary. Sasha tried to tell Jason to beg for protection, but he was too entangled in the chaos surrounding Michael and the custody battle for Y and Amelia. Carly listened with practiced empathy, but dismissed it as postpartum anxiety. Even Sunny remained neutral, unsure whether to believe in Willow they had known or the monster Sasha described. And maybe that was Willow's greatest strength, her ability to weaponize doubt, to wear innocence like a cloak, and to smile while tightening Venice. What Sasha feared most wasn't what Willow had already done. It was what she might do next. Because Willow had stopped reacting and started planning. She had learned from Nelle's mistakes, from Harmony's manipulation, from Na's madness. She didn't need to take Sasha's child by force. She just had to make the world believe Sasha wasn't fit to raise it. And then, with legal documents in hand, and a soft-spoken plea in court, she would take what she believed had always been hers. Michael, the children, the family-ish, was once promised, but lost. The most terrifying villains are not hoes who scream in rage, but those who smile while they burn. You too, Ash. Willow have become that kind of villain. And no, poor Charles just hadn't realized it yet. But Sasha had. Sasha knew. And to the others opened their eyes. It might be too late. The court's decision had been swift and crushing. Michael was granted full custody of both Way and Amelia, stripping Willow of hair rights as a mother in one devastating motion. The proceedings painted her as emotionally unstable, morally compromised, and fundamentally unfit. And with each word spoken against her, Michael grew more resolute, his lawyers more vicious, and the courtroom more frigid. Yet in the shadows of that victory, a different battle raged, one far quieter, but no less violent. Sasha, pregnant with Michael's child, found herself thrust into a nightmare of betrayal and uncertainty. The very man who had sworn to support her from afar had now become a symbol of conditional affection. His interest in the unborn child ignited only when the truth of its paternity spilled into the public arena. What was once a private arrangement of independence became overnight a spectacle of control. Sasha wanted to raise her child alone, but Michael, emboldened by his legal triumph over Willow, began to view Sasha's baby not as a life they had created, but as a legacy he could no deferred to relinquish. In the middle of it all stood Willow, serene, soft-spoken, and impeccably comps. But beneath her careful poise lay something far more sinister. Cloaked compassion. She waged a silent work. Sasha's credibility as a mother. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. There were no public confrontations. No shouted accusations. But behind closed doors, Willow's influence seeped into every corner of Sasha's world, like a poison with no antidote. She sowed doubt in places that mattered, in the offices of family services, in the minds of mutual friends, and even in the quiet corridors of the hospital. Her campaign was methodical and ruthless. She didn't need to destroy Sasha's life with fire. She did it with whispers, documentation, anonymous tips, and veiled concern. Her voice, when it reached their ears, never trembled. She was always worried, always compassionate, always just doing what's best for Bobby. Those around them began to sense unease, but no one moved. Jason hesitated, his loyalty divided, his instincts dulled by the entanglements of Fifth's own past. Carly, ever perceptive, grew, contemplative but ultimate. Sonny, a man of power and pride, watched from a distance, his silence a form of surrender. But Willow, she moved like wind through a locked room, untraceable, undeniable, and impossible to stop. What no one seemed to grasp was that Willow wasn't merely reacting to betrayal. She was orchestrating Zamink, far more calculated. Raised by a cult leader, shadowed by the madness of her biological mother Nina, and forever haunted by the legacy of her deranged twin, Nelle, Willow had not emerged from her lineage untouched. She had inherited their darkness, but polished it with grace. She didn't simply learn how to serve. She had mastered the art of domination. Sasha, feeling the walls close in, turned to the only person she thought might still listen. Jason. One stormy evening she arrived at his doorstep, drenched and desperate, her voice trembling with terror as she pleaded for his help to leave Port Charles. But Jason, ever bound by his allegiance to Michael, simply looked at her with a heavy heart and said he could not do anything that would go against Michael's interests. The words hit Sasha like a blow to the chest. It was the confirmation of what she had already feared deep inside. Every exit had been blocked, every door bolted shut. That night marked a shift in Sasha. She stopped feeling merely hunted. She began to feel haunted. Willow's presence loomed over her life like a ghost, an omnipresent shadow watching her every move. She couldn't sleep, she couldn't breathe. She started to question her own reality. Her sleeping pills began to vanish from the cabinet with a tautantly. Her phone rang in the middle of the night with silent calls from blocked numbers. The hallway lights outside her apartment flickered erratically, and one morning she found her car tires slashed, her brake lines cut. The police offered no answers, only shrugs. Just bad luck, they said. Just coincidence, but Sasha knew better. One afternoon, as she stepped out of prenatal checkup at the hospital, she froze. Across the street, just behind the glass of the lobby windows, stood Willow. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't frowning. She wasn't moving at all. She stood there perfectly still, arms folded, her gaze locked onto Sasha Lakia, blade drawn but not yet used. She didn't turn away. She didn't turn away. She just stared, as if to remind Sasha that no matter where she went, she would never be beyond reach. The nights grew longer, colder. Sasha began checking her locks 3, 4, 5 times before bed. She started sleeping with lights on, with furniture pushed in front of her door. And then it happened. One night, Sasha awoke in a cold sweat. The room was quiet, still untouched. But when she turned to reach for a glass of water, her eyes landed on something resting perfectly at the center of her bed. It was the ultrasound photo of her baby, torn in half, deliberately placed, no sign of a break-in, no fingerprints. No alarms tripped, just silence, and the chilling certainty that Willow had been there. She didn't need to leave notes. She didn't need to threaten aloud. Her message was clear. You have something I want, and I will take it when I'm ready. Sasha understood then that this was no longer a struggle for custody. It was a war of willpower, a test of sanity. And Willow, with all her inherited darkness and learned precision, wasn't just fighting for a child. She was fighting for her place in a world that had stripped everything from her, and she would reclaim it by force if necessary, or worse, by convincing everyone else that it was the only just outcome. Willow didn't scream. She didn't rage, she didn't lead. She simply became the storm. And for Sasha, the storm had just begun. No one believed her, not the court, not fellow wires, not even those closest to the unfolding chaos. Sasha stood utterly alone in the center of Storm no one else submittable or willing to see. There were no fingerprints, no surveillance footage, no eyewitnesses. Everything she feared, everything she whispered in desperation behind closed doors was dismissed as paranoia, stress, or the result of her complicatedrants. And, meanwhile, the world continued to praise Willow, gentle, selfless, forgiving Willow. The same woman who had once donated bone marrow to save her son's life. The same woman who had wept in public but forgiven her husband's affair with quiet dignity. The same woman whose white nurse's uniform and soft-spoken voice evoked compassionate trust in every room she entered. But all of it was a mask. Beneath the delicate exterior was a woman no longer motivated by love or justice or maternal instinct. Willow had pumped something else entirely, something colder, sharper, and terrifyingly deliberate. She wasn't simply reacting to betrayal. She was carrying out a mission. Her sole objective now was vengeance, a slow, unrelenting punistum for those she believed harder to disrupt the fragile illusion of control she had built around her family. And while she wore her grief like a badge of honor, behind that mourning veil was the smirk of a tactician who had learned that the most devastating wars are not fought with fists, but with silence and systems. The courtroom still sided with her, blind, tough-wrought beneath the saintly glow. They saw only the mother who had given all she had for her children, who had loved them fiercely, who had tried and failed, and yet still showed up in soft pastel with steady hands. They saw a woman transformed by loss, not consumed by it. But they didn't see the glint in her eyes when Sasha entered the room. They didn't heart icy edge in her voice when she asked questions about Sasha's fitness as Amathar. They didn't recognize that what appeared to be concern was in fact control, subtle, strategic, and suffocating. And now it was too late for Sasha to run. She knew it. The moment she tried to act, the trap snapped shut. Her legal documents, applications to move, to protect herself, to seek custody terms outside Port Charles were mysterious lied. Her passport was revoked under the guise of documentation. Her bank accounts were locked pending identity verificationes. Phone calls to attorneys went unanswered. Her medical records were questioned. Her insurance mysteriously flagged. Everything around her, every institution she relied on, began to erode. Not by accident, but by invisible deasing. Because Willow had long since figured out that true power doesn't lean in confrontation. It lies in bureaucracy. In knowing who to whisper to, what files to flag, which agencies to notify. It lay in knowing how to make the system dance for her like a marionette. And it did perfectly. She didn't have to lift a finger anymore. The system was doing her bidding, and Sasha was being erased one line of code, one closed account, one rejected appeal at a time. Every step she took was a dead end. Every attempt to protect herself unraveled in her hands. And yet Willow Shands remained clean, her smile unwavering, her voice calm, and even a sever. She remained the angel of Port Charles in the public eye, while behind the curtain she pulled every string. Sasha began to realize the full extent of what she was facing. Not merely a woman scorned, but the living embodiment of an entire legacy of calculatemedness. Willow was the culmination of fevery dark thread in her family's bloodline. Harmony's religious fanaticism, Nenne's obsessional cruelty, Nelle's theatrical laughlessness. All of it fused into a single, composed force cloaked in empathy. She was the perfect weapon, a creature sculpted by trauma, empowered systems, and fueled by an unrelenting drive to reclaim what she believed washers, her children, her identity, her legacy, and above all, her hold on Michael. And if she couldn't have him fully, no one else ever would. To Sasha, that truth settled like frost in her bones. She wasn't just being punished. She was being erased methodically, efficiently, without mercy. Every part of her that cold offer resistance was being stripped away. her voice, her credibility, her legal standing, her financial independence. And yet, Willow smiled. Always smiled. Just like Nelle once had right before she pushed people over the edge. It weighs same smile, the same quiet threat warned. I've already won. You just haven't figured it out yet. And Sasha understood. She understood that this wasn't a fight she could win with facts or evidence. There were no breadcrumbs to lead back to Willow. No way to expose her without sounding unhinged. Every moment of defiance was twisted into further proof of Sasha's instability. And every breath she took felt like it might be her last before walls caved in entirely. The city that once felt like home now felt like Akajej. And Willow held Decky, not by force, but by manipulation so precise it was surgical. And as Sasha awake night after night, staring at torn pieces of her baby's sonogram list, deliberately on her bed like a signature in the dark, she stopped wondering how Willow had done it. She started wondering when she would strike again and whether anyone would be left to stop her. What a whirlwind of emotion, betrayal, and bombshell revelations. Monday's episode promises to change the lives of Port Charles residents forever. Will Michael recover from Sasha's revelation? Will Nina's secrets destroy her credibility? And is this really the end for Curtis and Portia? One thing's for sure, General Hospital is just getting started. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to GH Updates for your daily dose of drama. We'll be right here, bringing you every twist, every turn, and every unforgettable moment. Until next time, stay tuned, Port Charles fans.